Hey, Travel Brats. Happy Travel Brat Tuesday. Welcome back. We got Soph and I have Rikimah Glymph back with me, travel extraordinaire, wellness expert. And today we're going to be having a little fun. We're going to be talking about all of her travel tips. Rikimah, hey, so good to have you back. How's it going?
Thanks for having me. No, I'm super excited to have this conversation.
Great. And so I picked a few categories based on the questions that our travel rats usually ask. And I just wanted to touch on them with you. First, I want to start with world travel. So,
Okay.
how do you determine which method to travel by? Plane, flight, cruise, rail, all the above?
Yeah, yep. Well, it's very non-conventional. I start dreaming about it. That last trip to Jamaica, I literally had a dream about it. I was supposed to be going to
No way.
Antigua, and I was like, you know what? They got cruises headed to Antigua and to St. Kitts and some of these other places. No, I saw myself in first class. Let's be clear.
Love it. Guys, channel that dream. So who is the Salvador Dali? Get into your Salvador Dali mind, start dreaming about your like crazy trip vibes.
Right, that's right. I mean, that's how I do it though. I mean, it's manifested, right? Like it comes through from the dream. Sometimes, like I said, I walk through, the hallway and I see that map and I'm like, where are you trying to go? If I'm trying to go to the Caribbean, that becomes very easy because I know that there are a couple ways I can get there.
Yeah.
Europe sometimes is fun if I start dreaming about Europe because the first thing I start thinking about is like, I know how I got to get there, but then what happens when I get there is up to me. And I love riding the trail, like the trains and stuff out there. And so it really just depends.
That's really cool. I'm so glad you answered that like that because when I read that, I was like, I hope she doesn't say like, well, if I'm going to Europe, I plane. If I'm leaving the country, I take a plane. I'm in the country, I drive or something like, duh, stupid. Like I can't drive across the ocean. So I'm like glad that that was the coolest answer that anyone could have ever given me. I
It's
was like,
true. And also like,
travel. What?
well, and also like, because are you really going to someone else's country to drive? Like my brother drives all the time. Me, the first time I tried to drive in Barbados, they drive on the opposite side of the road and the opposite side of
Oh,
the car. I hit something as soon as I left the parking lot.
yeah.
Like, and I thought, this is not relaxing. This
I am
is
already a bad enough driver in the normal standard United States
that's
roads. I
right.
do not need to be driving left or on the other side of the car. I don't know. That's not no. And
That's
well, and
right. Know
then
yourself.
yeah, know yourself, right? Exactly. You're like wellness, know yourself, know your strengths and your weaknesses. Good job, Sophia.
That's right.
And the other question I had was I know because I know you've been to Europe too. And I mean, I don't know because I know Europe's big in the train systems, and I imagine other countries are too. Are you big on trains when you travel?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Only when I'm in Europe.
Okay.
When I'm in Africa, no, thank you. It's probably going to be by Jeep or by plane,
Okay.
but definitely not by train because they don't really have that kind of infrastructure. When I'm in Europe, the trains are the easiest ways for me to get in and out of certain countries. So, because they have the rail, that's what I was going to say a little bit a while ago. My son and I went to Germany and I was like, I'm ready to go. So here we are, Belgium, Luxembourg, France, finally get down to Italy a couple days later. And my son is like, we have been to all these countries over the course of a couple of days. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly it. To be in Europe, you can get anywhere in a matter of a few days on a train. And the trains are sleek, they're sexy, they are not dirty, they work, right? In the Caribbean, you're not going to see that. The way you're traveling in the Caribbean is by the time you get to that country on that plane, they may have some of those crazy vans to pick you up that's honking
Yeah.
all over the place, right? The ones that are zooming down the road, they have a system, but it's more like a bus or a van system, not a train system, for example.
Yeah. It's funny because I always thought that that would be such a great, and I know that the United States is so much like more spread out state-wise, and we're one country versus like you can go into all these different countries in Europe. But I feel like it would be so much fun, just like the train experience. So to be like, oh, I'm gonna ride a 9-hour train from, Southwest Florida to, Atlanta, Georgia. I'm just gonna jump on and I'm gonna, relax and I don't have to drive. I would personally love that, A, because I'm a terrible driver, and B, because I feel like it's more environmentally friendly. So I wonder if at some point,
Mhm.
in here in the States, we're going to start. I don't know if there's ever going to be a shift because people love their cars and now we've got electric cars and automated driving cars. But I'm like, I will still ride a train. Okay, I will. Is anybody with me? Who's with me? Like
Yeah,
nobody
I feel
crickets.
like I could be with you as long as they promised that I was gonna have like the best food.
Yes.
They were gonna take. That's exactly it, right?
That's what
Like
I was
I need
thinking.
snack. All right, and also like if they're gonna take care of it the way that in Europe does, right? Like, can I sleep on said train? Is
Yeah.
this gonna be a train that I can have a quiet car? Like, is there going to be right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think part of the allure of trains in Europe though is that you're going to a different country.
Yeah.
So even if we had that train system here in the States, I mean, I guess if you have people who love traveling state travel, because that's a whole cohort of people that
Yeah.
love to state travel. My sister has been to all kinds of states, but she's
Hmm.
only been to one international destination. Whereas for us, we have been mostly international, but we have only traveled, I think, maybe 19 or 20 states.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
different kind of traveler.
It is. Well, it is. And it's funny. I go back and forth. Like I haven't been too many like I really a continent I haven't been to like Africa, Australia. Like I haven't been to a lot of places except for like a couple places in Europe, and then we've been islands, South America, Central America. I'd love to do like Africa, New Zealand, Australia. But a funny thing is I do love states travel, and I think a big contributor to that is I'm not a huge solo traveler by myself overseas. I've never done that. And so it's like I'm always waiting for friends or family or, let's do it. Let's go to Scotland or let's go to Europe. And so another thing, and again, I'm not necessarily afraid to solo travel. It's just something I never thought about doing. And so I love when people come in and talk about solo travel because I want to know like what places are safer, what was your experience? But the other thing is because our family's so spread out,
Mhm.
we just end up traveling for the holidays, for birthdays, for breaks
Yeah.
all over the US because they're in Colorado and they're in fun places to visit, like Chicago, Colorado, New York, Southwest Florida, Atlanta. So that's kind of, or Texas, that's been the contributor to kind of staying in the States. But I don't
Mhm.
know about you, I'm a huge road tripper where like for our honeymoon, we took 2 months off and like went to Mexico for 8 days, but then when we came back we just like drove like up through Florida and like through
I
the
love
south
it.
and like hit up yeah, like hit up Tampa, Orlando, Miami, NOLA. We went to Atlanta, we went to Gulfport, Mississippi to visit friends, and then we like flew to Colorado and hiked. But it was like my husband was like, "We're gonna drive," and I was like, "Yeah, we're gonna have a road trip. Let's pack a bag for each separate hotel. I'm gonna." And he's like, "You're crazy, but okay." And I was like, "And then you can chill in Mexico. Like I'll let you chill in Mexico, and then we'll go crazy and
That's
everything we
right.
pass,
That's
we run
right.
out on the side. And yeah, so I don't know. I guess there's pros and cons to both
Yeah.
driving, flying, cruises, and then pros and cons to traveling in Europe. Just like you said, there's a lot more train. You can jump from different countries in the trains.
Yeah. Well, and I
Yeah.
think also like for cruisers, I mean, because we work with cruisers all the time through the
Hmm.
travel entity. And for cruisers, they're not actually looking to immerse themselves, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
an immersive traveler. I want to go to your back roads. I'm trying to hike up the trail. I want to chase the lemurs.
Yeah.
Like I'm going there, right? I want to sit in
Hmm.
your tiki or your hut. Like this is me. I am very
Yeah.
much like, let's do this. I
Yeah.
may come out even with bush paint on me for crying out loud. Like I'm doing all that. Okay.
Yeah.
But when I meet cruisers, cruisers are like, nah, I want to see it, but I'm not really trying to stay there all my life. Right. Like,
Hmm.
so for them, more of their experience has to do with how much fun that boat is. That is a floating hotel that
Mm.
has everything literally all inclusive. So I say like cruises are really great for like our aging population. Folks who are
Yeah.
50, 55, 60, 65. Why? Because they don't have to walk all over the place. They don't have to worry about, getting bit by every mosquito out there. They don't have to worry about yellow fever. They don't have to worry. Whereas when we do ground travel, that's when the travel doctors are really like, yeah, you're going
Yeah.
to get all these different things, right? And if they need a doctor really quickly on the boats, they've got them if they just want to see a little bit of a place or don't want to see it at all. They don't even
Mhm.
have to get off the boat. If they decide,
Right.
I don't even like the music headed into this dock, I'm not going nowhere. Like there's choices. And
Yeah.
those boats take you everywhere. I mean, they've got Caribbean cruises, they've got river cruises
Oh
throughout
yeah.
Asia and Europe, even like
Yeah.
so. Yeah, where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, I know that for a fact that it's a great you said that because my grandparents love river cruises. And my grandpa's 79 or he's like 82 now. He retired when he was 79, and they did like a Seine River cruise and
Yeah.
they just like they loved it. And I was like, "Oh, of course." Like they pass they pass so many countries in Europe. We just get to eat and sleep and read and relax and just talk. I was like, hey, shoot, if I was ever looking to just chill out, that would be the kind of trip. And it's funny you say that because there are people that like to do the adventurous side like we do. And then there's people that like to really just more of like, I'm a cruise, I'm a relax. Some of my girlfriends are like, I don't want to ski with you. I want to go to a cruise and get drunk every day and just like lay around and go to some shows or bars. And I'm like, okay. But it's fun to just have a mix, I guess, you
Yeah,
know? And
yeah.
depending, and like you said, in regard to wellness, which is what we've been talking about for the last, couple weeks, it's neat to be able to be like, okay, I need an adventure or I need like a vacation, you
That's right.
know?
That's right.
Yeah. And so
That's
like I could go to Mexico because this is really funny. When we did go to Mexico, I promised that we would relax on our honeymoon, like I said, and we didn't because my husband had never been to
right.
Mexico before. So I was like, we got to go do this. We got to go snorkeling in Isla Mujeres. We got to go to the ruins. We got to, and he's like, because I've been there like 12 years because my dad's from Mexico. So,
Okay.
so he was like so tired by the end of that trip. And I was like, okay, this maybe wasn't a honeymoon. So a year later, like fast forward a year later on our 1 year anniversary, I was like, oh, okay, we're going to go back to Mexico. I got like an adult only hotel and we're just going to like do nothing. And he's like, you promise? And I was like, nothing. Like, we're not going to leave the hotel. Like, we're just going to do the little, like, and then, I'm trying to drag him in the morning. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
water spinning and snorkeling. He's like, no, 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 no. You said we weren't going to do anything. You go do that by yourself. So like we literally just read books and like
Yeah,
laid on the beach and just relaxed like you did in Jamaica.
that's right. That's
And
right.
it was less of my vibe, but he was like so happy. And I was like, okay, you win. Like this is our honeymoon that we
Yeah.
didn't have. Yeah, our honeymoon that
It's
we were supposed to have a
true.
year ago.
That's right. It's true. My brother is my constant reminder. He says, Rikimah, when you go on trips, you're always the serial planner. You're the one who's going to make sure everybody's turned up. Literally, it is
Yeah.
a turn up for everybody. Grandpa wants to go party with the locals. We got a party for you too. Let's get you on the party bus to get you where you're trying to get to. You know, but then there is always this sort of exhaustion of like after I've planned this epic experience and we are going through the motion of experiencing it. Then my brother's like, Rakima, did you get any downtime? Because to your husband's point, I am a person who likes to be a beach bum. I
Yeah.
yearn for the sand, for the sun. I'm the person who still gets burned because I want the sun on me. I want to lay there and just have it happen, right?
Yeah, you're killing me because so we got our books and we went to there was a cute little spot in the trees, like where it was still sunny, but there was like a shade tree for Mike and like sun for me. And there's the water and the pool there. And then there's like that little cute area where no one was. And he is on so it's a circle and I'm on the other side and he's on the other side because one side is shady and one side is sunny. So like every time I was reading something, I was like, oh, this part's really cool. Guess what just happened? I'm like yelling across the thing because we're not next to each other. Because he's like, if you want to be in the sun, you have to go over there. Like, I'm not sitting in the sun with you because
Yeah,
he's like
yeah,
so white. He's like, I will burn so bad. So it
yeah,
was really funny. But
yeah.
I get what you're saying. It is nice to relax though.
I think
And
so, and I think different countries bring that, right? Like
the sand, it's fun. Yeah.
I think that countries like Costa Rica give me a very zen vibe. Like I don't feel like I want to party when I'm in Costa Rica, for example. If I go to
Yeah.
Barbados, I don't want to party. That's not what I'm here for. If I go to Jamaica,
Mhm.
I probably want to go wind up somewhere. I want to party. Yes, I do. Right. But then
Yeah.
if I go to like Canada, like we spend a lot of time in Toronto, I don't want to party, but I do want to sightsee and I want to see the same things I
Yeah.
see all the time. Right.
Yeah.
Like, and so it's a weird thing that different countries bring different things. When we are in London or in France, we're chasing parkour gyms. My son loves to parkour all over the world. And so sometimes when we're picking our countries, it's not about the relaxing or the not, it's about what can we do when we get there. So I never pick countries that don't engage my son on the things that would bring him joy in those countries also. And he will say things like, I want to parkour or I want to make sure I swim every day. It could be ocean, it could be, pool, but I want to make sure I swim. Sometimes we go and we're like, we're in a luxury mode right now. So we're definitely not going to this place because we're not going to find it, right? Like sometimes you go to places overseas and they say we're a 5 star, and you realize actually for my standards, this is a 3.5, buddy. This is not a 5 star.
Yeah.
Now
And
they're
you're like, what?
threatening me, right? Because I'm like, no, 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 no. I see how you rated yourself. This is not it. So we do have different locations around the world where we know, look, depending on what we're after in that moment, we know where we're going. Um,
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. And speaking of just like different star places. I know that a lot of people have different views on like hotels versus Airbnbs, bed and breakfast, hostels. So what would be some of the pros and cons of all of those, and just kind of like when you choose to stay in certain different ones on
Yeah. So it's funny you mentioned hostels. I stayed in hostels my entire college experience. That's what I
Mhm.
got bored. And also, let's be clear, I also wanted to be like in spaces that forced me to bump into other people
Yeah.
because I was always a solo traveler. So the hostels allowed for me not to be as on my own. And I could still make friends if I wanted to. So I love those. But that was for when I was younger because as I got older, I think I got a little bougie. I don't know because I stopped staying in my hostels and and hostels come with different degrees. You can get
Uh-huh.
a one room that's just yours, you're not sharing for a couple of extra dollars, right?
Mhm.
So you can do that dance too. But as I got older, I stopped wanting to share with random strangers because all of a sudden it was less about adventure. It was more about safety for me as a woman traveling alone, right?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
stopped doing that. I moved into the 3-star hotels and the 4-star hotels. I like them. When I was by myself without a kid, I loved them because they didn't break bank, because they were always central to where I wanted to be. When I had a son, my son has high allergies. He can't eat everything. He's got nuances about his life, right?
Mhm.
And so it meant that I stopped staying in the 3 stars because they weren't as flexible in terms of what we needed. I only
Right.
found those in your 4.5, 5 stars that were like, what do you need? Right. And
Mhm.
it was like, I'm not fighting you about needing an EpiPen or a doctor to come in to COVID test me, or because those locations, they will send in doctors. They have them on site half the time and stuff, right? Even if you're going to pay an extra penny to be there and not a penny,
Right.
it's a couple of
Right.
dollars, but to be there, they have different things that they afford you, amenities that they afford you that like the 3 and below won't have they won't have there. So for luxury ones, the positive is I can get a little bit of everything I want, including the chef to come and talk to me about what he put in this food and whether or not if it's safe for my son, right?
Yeah.
The downside is always going to be the cost, right? Was it worth it to spend a couple extra $1,000 a night? You
Yeah.
asked with a kid like mine, we need space. I'm a Gemini. Remember, we talked about this on the other episode. I need space. So that means that if I'm going to go luxury, I need at least a 1 bedroom or 2 bedroom hotel room. And
Right.
that's going to come at a very, hefty cost. But for my mental health, when I'm traveling, I need to come back in and decompress all of the extroverts that have been around me all day. Uh,
Right.
right.
Exactly.
And so that helps me. I love the 4 stars and the 3 stars. Like I said, the positive is it's a little bit more accessible. I think it's still nice. It's accessible. I think more often than not, you'll still find a hotel room that won't have tons of mold. That's not gonna, they're not gonna be as rigid around what's possible or what's not possible.
Yeah.
But the downside to that one is, again, it's a money's game, right? Which means that like the minute you start going into 4 and 5, people start really looking at you that way too. So things that should normally cost you $5, you're paying $10 for. Why is this hat $35 at this resort? Well, because look at the resort you were sitting at. That hat ain't worth the
Right.
35 you just asked me to pay you, because I know I could have went on the side of the road right where I got this sugar cane and I could have got me a $5 hat, right? So
Right.
it's also the sort of, and then the 3 and the 2 stars, I used to like those when I was by myself, because it wasn't about immersing myself in the room. I didn't need
Mhm.
to like get my wellness back together. I didn't need
Right.
multiple rooms. I didn't need any of that. What I needed was to not have bed bugs and to have a safe place to be. And I
Yeah.
could find those even at those levels. I could still find those. And so, but they are not going to have a lot of things to offer me, like tours and adventure experiences, right? The 4 and your
Mhm.
5 stars, they typically come with concierges. So if
Yeah.
I want to build out or not build out, I at least have a partner there that says, well, what do you feel like today, Mrs. Glymph? Let me help you build that out. Let me take this burden off of your shoulders. And I tend to sometimes like to be catered to instead of
Yeah.
being the person catering to all the time, right? So
Yeah.
different housing just brings different types of excess
Yeah.
amenities, price points. Even at the 4 and 5, I could even choose what pillow I want. And I'm like this. I got issues with all feathers. So one time I went into a room and I swear I thought birds were in the room. I was like, this room smells like feathers. There's a bird. There's something in here alive. And as it turns out, it was just the pillows. They gave me down pillows And in my sleep, I had turned the pillow smell into animals. And so I had to get the alternative pillows brought in and everything was taken out. Um,
Wow.
because I couldn't do it. And
Yeah.
most people in luxury like that. So
Well, yeah, no, and that's so funny because it is so funny how like when you go somewhere, like I always say, and it's funny because this has changed a little, but I would always say, whatever, I don't care about the hotel, we just have to sleep in there. But if you can't sleep because of
That's
something in
right.
there, because and so I think it's like you said, as we get older, I think we appreciate like a good night's sleep and your space, especially if you're traveling with someone else. And so you're like, okay, maybe we've graduated from like hostels and maybe we're a little, I do like bed and breakfast. They're cute, and then
That's
if
right.
you're in like a cute, quaint little place, and then, Airbnbs can be good, can be bad for big groups of people. They're better. But for like, I feel like they've become just as expensive as hotels if it's
Oh,
not,
absolutely.
yeah.
Ah,
And so it's like, I'm gonna go stay in a hotel because they're gonna wash my towels and they're gonna fold
that's
my
right.
clothes. They're not gonna fold my clothes, but they're gonna fold my bed sheets and
Yeah.
everything. So,
Yeah.
so
Well,
I
we've
think that's
stayed,
good.
we've we've stayed at lots of Airbnbs too. When Malik was really young, Malik is my son. I used to have to cook his food because I couldn't trust that the hotels were doing his food properly. He can't do peppers. He can't do, right. Like there's just this
Yeah,
long list of what he can't do. And so for me, it was easier to cook his food. That
yeah,
took stress off my plate. So I get an Airbnb right in the central. Sometimes it was cheaper, sometimes it wasn't, but it gave me access to a backyard for a kid that runs around like crazy, gave me a
mm,
kitchen to cook whenever I needed to. The opposite side of that is that I had to go find the grocery store and I needed to know how to say what I needed and speak the language.
right. Well, especially with
Um,
long-term travel for
oh
you
yeah.
guys.
Oh yeah.
And you don't, a hotel for long-term travel really isn't that, consistent and sustainable. And then
No.
the other question I was gonna have for you is, so how long were your trips usually? While like Malik was young and you were homeschooling him, were you like in a place
Yeah.
2 weeks or a month or?
Gosh. It is ranged. I mean, we've been in places for several months, even, right? So,
Wow.
to your point about the type of housing, if we're there for longer than a week, chances are we're doing an Airbnb. And if
Yeah.
we're not doing an Airbnb, we are swapping hotels. Because the other thing you realize quickly with hotels is that the menu runs down real quick. You'll be
Mm,
eating the same thing all your life, right? And so, so
yeah.
there's no virtue in that. The Airbnbs work way better for trips that are longer than a week stay, especially particularly in countries where transportation is not a hard thing. Because sometimes when we go
Right.
into sub-Saharan Africa, for example, or Southeast Asia, we need the hotels because we don't speak the language because they don't have transportation that's reliable or that you don't have to worry about extremist behaviors and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
sometimes also the country's safety stuff plays a role in how we might travel too. In Europe, we have been in Europe where bombs have gone off, stuff like that. But it's more accessible. I can call a Uber, I can call a Lyft, I can do other things to get me around. And also English is pretty dominant all over the place, right? But if I go to Thailand, if I go to Vietnam, if I go to Japan, that becomes questionable for me. Even in
Mhm.
Japan, I don't even do taxis there because the taxis there, they lock the doors and you can't unlock them from the back.
Wow.
They lock
I
them
didn't
in
know
the
that.
front and you don't even have an opportunity to open the door. The taxis don't come with a lever to open that door or to unlock it. So literally, if you can imagine, I was like, oh my God, I hope we're not getting kidnapped because I can't get out.
No,
Right.
that's scary. That is
That,
scary. And
and I
the amount
stopped
of,
traveling that way. After that, it was like, no, I need a hotel that has a concierge where I can pay for a dedicated driver that is
yeah.
linked to this hotel. That has to do with traveling with child, though, right? Single woman with child, and how many eyes are on our travel in case something goes wrong,
Well,
right?
and that's a great point because when I traveled, okay, we traveled to Mexico a ton with our dad because like I said, he was from there. But and we would never do, hotels where you eat in the hotel. He lived there. We would go stay with friends
Yeah.
or stay in hotel like other hotels that just we would go outside and have dinner and go meet up with people. But when I played collegiate tennis. And so when we were traveling to international tournaments in Mexico, we would stay at those like hotels that have everything in like there because the
Yeah.
food is cleaner and
Yeah.
you don't like the last thing you want to do is get sick. I would always get sick every time I went to Mexico. And I was like, whatever, I'll throw up a little bit, we'll be fine. But with tournaments, you couldn't be thrown up on the tennis
Yeah.
court. So we would only eat in the hotel because we knew the food was cleaner and stuff like that. So like you said, it just kind of
Yeah.
depends on the
Yeah.
situation why you're there and whatnot.
Yeah, yeah. And the hotels will make sure you have plenty of water. That's the other thing is that we don't drink water from all over the world, right? Like my
Yeah.
son got sick when we were in India. We went to New Delhi. There are 17 days and we're sick for all 16 of them.
Oh,
Because the food was cooked in local water and our bodies were not ready and equipped for that. So we ended up having to go through a lot of different changes. And so the deal is that the hotels will also provide you with bottled water.
yeah,
And if you paid for it at the store, they actually place a premium on it, especially in countries where bottled water is where they're either discouraging it or there's not plenty of it,
right.
right? And
Yeah,
so you do have to think about that. Like, are you a traveler that's going to take the risk or not? I have had malaria before. I have been sick because of the water and the food. I have had dysentery too many times that I can count. Like, I don't play around with water. I don't play around with foods.
yeah,
And I don't play around with like staying out in the bush somewhere where I can't get medical help. I know the
right.
one time I got sick in West Africa, it literally took me a week and a half to get medvac out of there,
Wow.
because I was way in the bush. So they got to get me out of the bush to get me back to the city to then get me helivac out of there somehow, right? And
Yeah.
so it changes your perspective on the risks you're willing to take, both as a single person, but then also as a woman and also as
Yeah.
a child.
Yeah,
So,
that's important to think about. Yeah. I mean, honestly, on that note, I want to know, I'm going to jump to travel groups because I want
mhm.
to know which countries you would rank in your top for solo travel.
Ooh, I like that one. Okay, all right. I would go. Oh man, I would go Canada.
Okay.
I would go UK for sure. I would go, ooh, that's tricky. You see me? I'm over here like, ooh,
Oh, well, that's two. If you
yep. I feel like those are my two. Let me tell you why. Because my gender never played a role in either one of those countries. It never played a role. As much as I love
Huh.
Africa, a lot of those countries are also Muslim. And so women in the Middle East also, right? Middle East also. There's a certain way we're expected to behave and operate and all that good stuff. And I don't have that down. I'm as raw as it comes, right? So
Yeah.
and then you add that with a child and specifically a boy child. And that becomes very complicated. I almost wasn't allowed to leave a country because of they were like, where's his dad? And I was
Oh
like,
my
oh, this
gosh.
is weird. What if this was about trauma? Like, I gotta expose all that too? Like,
Oh no.
what do you mean, where's his dad? I got into the country without him. So that became, I think, a little unsafe for me, where I was like, oh, let me wait a little bit longer for this moving forward. And then the Caribbean, it's because there is a culture, and I saw this in Latin America also, where there's just a culture where the guys can just be a little aggressive towards women. And depending on how you register that, I'm not into the cat calls. I'm not into the super, aggressive kind of come on, girl. I'm not
Yeah.
into any. So that becomes a very unsafe experience for me because I will start to feel it as a lack of safety, right? Whereas there are some women who are like, all good, all good. It doesn't bother me. So for me, those two places, Canada and the UK, are the only two places that I've been where I wasn't chased down the street, where I didn't have to explain myself, where I didn't, right?
Yeah.
The other countries are good. I just think it depends on the other nuances in people's lives. If you're
Yeah.
without a child, you may not be bothered by Latin America, or you may not be bothered by the Central experience or the Caribbean because you're just a hot woman traveling through. And so you expect that people will admire your beauty, right?
Mhm.
Uh, but when it comes to children specifically, as a solo woman, the Middle East and Africa get really tricky really quick for me.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot because I think that there's this big, and be 100% transparent. There's a big female like empowerment movement going
Yeah,
around on solo travel. And
yeah,
hey,
yeah,
look, I love it. Not everybody needs a man. That's 100% true. And so solo traveling like you do with your child, but there shouldn't be to the point where there's an ignorance about, okay,
that's right.
hey, yeah,
That's
here's the streets we don't go on here, just because wrong place. And again, sometimes it's just freak things, wrong place, wrong time. But
yeah,
there are preventative measures, like that you can,
yeah,
you can put in place and pay attention to that keep you away from majority of the harm, that you
that's
would.
right.
So yeah,
That's right.
I like that. I like to
Yeah,
recommend to women that are doing solo travel, hey, go to Canada, hey, go to the
yeah.
UK,
Yeah.
your
And
cycle
also
for
like you can go to certain places in Africa, like South Africa would be fine. Only problem is they have a big old issue with like femicide, for example. And so they've got stuff. So what I will say to travelers is do your homework. Know
yeah,
what's out happening in the time that you're trying to go, because it isn't always consistent. There's
Yeah.
been times that I've been to Ethiopia by myself, never a problem at all. But then when I went to Senegal, which is my favorite country, I almost didn't get out of the country. Right. And that was the first time. And I've been there 7 times. And it was that one time, it was the seventh time that did it for me. Right. I went to the Middle East. I was fine as a woman by myself. What I wasn't fine is when I traveled with my son. And so maybe if I had a daughter, maybe it was different. It would have been different. But because he was a son, a boy, you have to know the regions you're moving into and the beliefs of these regions and stuff, you know?
Yeah, you gotta be careful. And
Yeah.
well, on that note, I did have a section on traveling with children abroad. So,
Yeah.
what advice would you have for parents traveling abroad with children? Just general advice, like things you
I
need to
love
know,
it.
think about.
Yep, yep. Do the research on the country. You need to understand how they view discipline in countries. That's the one thing I hear so many people nervous about. Well, my kid was out of line and I couldn't address it because I wasn't sure. There are some countries that are not here for you in that discipline, right? Like they're not as
Mhm.
liberal as our country or otherwise. So that's the thing that I would really be thinking about, especially those of us with spoiled children like mine. It's just something you just need to know. Okay. The other one is around like food availability, right? When I
Mhm.
went to Argentina, it was all red meat for the most part, but we are a non-red meat family because my kid can't process it. And so
Mhm.
it was the longest 6 days I ever had been because he couldn't
Wow.
eat the food. So do the research on the local dishes, do the research on what's available. If you're a vegetarian, vegan, which is what I teeter on most days, it becomes that much more challenging. So if you're a family with lots of allergies or intolerances or even a vegan vegetarian diet, you know, sub-Saharan Africa may not be your place because they
Right.
can't grow that stuff, right?
Right.
Like,
Because it's
but you
organic.
might, that's right. But you might go to North Africa where they've got plenty of vegetation and lots of crisp vegetables and stuff. Make sure that you
Yeah.
travel with all of your kids' medicines. I can't stress this part enough, which is that people are, you know, constantly like, oh no, they should have Tylenol, should they? Not everywhere is America. Not everywhere is the UK, right? Like not every place has even the brands that we are familiar with, and their doses are different. Sometimes the pharmacies have things that have expirations that have passed 2 years ago that they were
Mhm.
given, you know, by the world, right? And so remembering those parts too. And then the last thing I'll just say is that water, water, water. Just please be careful on water. Kids, my
Yes.
son's body still has to fight even to this day to try and repair itself from things that happened years ago
Wow.
because you know because we were hippy dippy about, oh yeah, he can try that mango, he can do this thing, not remembering that like systems don't show up the same way, they don't operate the same way.
Yeah.
And then I did say that was my last one, but here's my last one.
Mhm.
Look up the stuff that your kids love, find it in these countries. It builds
Yeah.
the opportunity for them to fall in love with it because they can see themselves there because they're doing some of the same things that bring them joy at home overseas. And that means that they get to meet up with other children that like the same types of things that they do. And it's almost like a shoe-in for ready-made friendships, pen pal experiences, all the things. And
Oh,
I
that's
think it
cool.
brought my son a lot of joy.
Yeah, I'm sure. And actually, that's a great point because one of my questions actually was, what are some kid-friendly activities abroad? And I know you said your son loved water, maybe theme parks, amusement parks. Are
Oh
there
yeah.
anything specific to y'all that you kind of would always look for?
Always a parkour gym, always a gymnastics gym. You can almost always find those because all they need are just warehouses to do that kind of stuff. And so we've always found those. We always, always, always are looking for a pool. We don't do public pools unless it's a hotel. But he's an ocean guy too. So like we'll do oceans too. The other thing that we usually do too is go find people who are training in the countries. Because we are a family that loves to pour resources into countries as part of our social responsibility also, we will
Mhm.
find local trainers. So in Barbados, for example, his coach there is Cuban. The best coach we ever ran into taught him how to do his butterfly stroke. It's beautiful,
Oh,
beautiful.
fun.
And that allowed for Malik to be himself within someone else's country because he could do the thing that he does regularly, right?
Yeah.
The other thing is that they always have parks. There's always parks. I think Barbados is the first place that I've ever traveled to where I couldn't find something that was resembling a park.
Mm.
It just simply, they choose to use indoor eateries. So they have a restaurant called Chefette, which is more like a KFC kind of experience or a Popeyes kind of experience. That
Yeah.
is the playground. They don't actually have them outside because the kids are expected to be at the beach all day. So the norms, the country norms really matters in terms of what you'll be able to gain access to. But there's usually a park, there's usually indoor gyms. And just, maybe consider finding some food tours where
Yeah.
you can be taken to some of the more reputable places and they'll show you where the candy houses are, what are the local ice creams for the kids. I think that's been great. I think we look for surfing and horses all the time. There's a
Mhm.
horse everywhere we find. So of course we're looking for farms too.
Yeah.
So any of that kind of stuff that your kids love, like I would be thinking about that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's neat. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
And in regard to just different kinds of travel, which countries would you rank for a top trip with your kids? So maybe
Ooh.
ones that you've been to with Malik, or if I was looking to go with my kids that I don't have.
Yep, yep. I love, love, love. I would take my kid back to Barbados. I said that time and time again. Barbados is my favorite. Mexico. I know a lot of people got a lot of things to say about Mexico, but I find that those folks are very kid friendly and they seem to love kids a lot. My son has always felt welcome in Mexico also. The Netherlands. The
Cool.
Netherlands is a kid friendly environment. Full stop.
Neat. I would have never like guessed that off the top of my head.
Right.
That's fun.
Parents are riding their kids on their bicycles. I mean, you see it everywhere. The kids are literally on the same bicycles with the parents eating out. Everybody's laughing. So I would also say Netherlands. The Senegalese, funny enough, they're actually kid people too.
Hmm.
Morocco and Senegal, both of them, all of the adults have always flocked to the children around. And
Okay.
so even when you meet some of those same types of backgrounds stateside, just if you meet a Senegalese or a Moroccan, just take stock of the way that they interact with children because Malik has always felt at home with both of those cultures. They're always ready to give you their food. They're always ready to play around with the children. It's not so serious and stuffy, right?
Yeah.
Which, as a polar example to that, when I go to Spain, it doesn't seem like that country is set up for children. We spent time in Madrid and literally, and we did Madrid and Barcelona, and I literally could not hardly find anything for Malik. And it wasn't just about finding to-dos, it was also just the rate and the amount of smoking that was happening. The
Mm,
smoking and the nightlife was like, this is not where my son is going to enjoy his experience. So
yeah.
some of the places that are environmentally a little cleaner, like I said, like Netherlands, those places feel like, and in Netherlands,
Yeah.
a million parks also, like, let's be clear, there's bikes and parks and stuff everywhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then maybe Thailand, I would say Thailand too.
Cool.
Malik felt like a king out in Thailand. I mean, I don't know if it's because the girls were all
The
over him.
jungle.
But the food, they were willing to adjust his food. They were willing to play around with him. They had a lot of indoor experiences for the children, all the way from 0 to I think 15 or something like this. We kept finding. So those are
Cool.
some places. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And okay, I'm gonna keep it rolling because I love the like different kinds of trips. So what about for either a like destination wedding and or honeymoon?
Ooh, okay. So love St. Lucia.
Okay.
Love St. Lucia. Love Aruba. St. Lucia and Aruba are probably my two favorite in the world.
Okay, cool. I love it. I love it. And then I would ask about a friends trip. So either like a large group of friends, guys and girls, or like a girls trip. Maybe those are different categories, but
Okay, a friend's trip. I could see friends going out to Phuket. I know people talk about Phuket, Thailand as a romance destination. I know they do. But Phuket is a lot more than romance. They got bars lined up all along the ocean floor. They got all kinds of partying that you could dream of. The other place is Ibiza.
yeah.
Uh, that's a really good place, but that's a place for people who want to party, for example, right? So Thailand for me, I like because you can find a party or you don't have to. Ibiza
Mhm.
is a place where I just feel like it's party. It's like disco. It feels like party for me, rave style party. Um, where else would I take some friends? I would take some friends. Oh, you got me digging in my whole arsenal. Oof.
You got a big arsenal. It takes a second to think about it.
You see me? I'm like, ooh, this
Like,
is a yeah. Maybe I would also consider. I would take friends to Colombia also. I will. I would do that. We just
oh,
came back from
okay.
Cartagena. We just came back from Cartagena. We have done Cartagena and we went to Baru Island, right
Oh,
off of
cool.
Cartagena. And while it is not like super wild, you can find wild and you can find relax. So I tend to like the places where you can find a little bit of all of it.
Yeah.
And surrounded by beautiful water and beautiful people who are amazing.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. Okay. And okay, last group for a large or extended family group trip.
Large groups. Okay, extended family. I might go.
Not Jamaica.
No, we just say that. No, I would consider. See, the islands would be tough for me because they tend to be really expensive. And so when
Mhm.
you're thinking about large groups of people, I think folks are looking for inexpensive or at least not
Yeah.
as expensive. I would probably look somewhere in Central America. I'd probably look Costa Rica. I'd probably look Puerto Rico even. I would probably think about um, US Virgin Islands actually would be on my list of
Yeah.
just a larger family group too. I would even be thinking about like I would be thinking US territories more than anything because when you start to get in Southeast Asia and Africa, you're talking about 16 hours plus of flying, which most people
Yeah.
are not going to do. They don't want to do that, right?
Right.
Europe is not really what I would consider family because I don't get that vibe. Like that's not where I would take my immediate family. So
Mhm.
I'm looking for at least a warm place that's melanated for me, for my preferences, and where you can find stuff that's not as expensive. So I would be thinking Central America, I think, or some sort of US territory.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I would do that too. Family reunion time. And when you travel, are there certain tools or apps that you really like to use while you're traveling?
Oh, that's a good point. Hmm. There was an app that I used to use a couple years ago that's an expat app. It's
Uh-huh.
called Black expats. But it was because it was a way for me as an African American lady to go find other expats that looked like me that were out overseas in these areas that didn't look like me.
Oh,
So
that's
I
cool.
love Black Pat. I think it's called Black Pat. I love that. Let's see. Did I use anything else? I don't think I used. No. I mean, of course, the airlines and stuff like that, but like, no, no.
Okay. Well, no, that's neat. Okay. Yeah, I like that. And then also on the topic of travel assistance,
Mhm.
just to touch back on a little bit about what you do and what your expertise is in, why, just in general, why should I use a travel advisor?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, I think that if you're in need of more information about the countries, we can be very helpful. I think that if you are someone that don't like having to put together all the logistics, or you are someone who has notoriously forgotten certain logistics, right? Whether it's checklist, whether it is, dotting the I's on making sure there's transfers from the airport or from the hotels to wherever you want to go. If you're someone who don't really know what you want to do in those countries and you're open, but you don't know where to start, we can
Hmm.
be really great at dreaming with you, dreaming for you, dreaming with you. I love to partner with clients. I don't like to do it for you. I love to dream with you though. So I'll start
Right.
to ask questions and I'll start to throw some ideas out there. And more often than not, it will get the juices going. The biggest part though also is that we have access to both flight rates and stuff.
Yeah.
We don't end up costing on the flight side of the house more than what you're going to find online. We're actually less because we get bulk rates. So you actually will save money on your flights and hotel experiences by using us. And the final thing is just thinking about someone who's thinking about your trip going easy. So if you're
Hmm.
overseas, it's going to be difficult for you to make adjustments with the airline. It's going to be difficult for you if you run into a problem that you can't get solved. Sometimes it's great to have a third party around that is the dedicated person for you. Hey,
Right.
I'm on this cruise, but I hate this cruise and I really want to get out of here. Great. Let me get you a flight up out of there. Let's get you to the next port location. I'm gonna get you home. Right. Like, and so it's just the idea of having that, how they use Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, phone a friend. It's one of those phone a friend moments where it's like, great. It isn't just about that you save me money on the cruise or the flight or the hotel. It's also because when I need someone at my time of need, I have someone to call, right?
Yeah.
Travel advisors can also do travel insurance. So I know at the height of COVID, everybody had to have travel insurance. And so we were all having to Google search who does travel insurance, right? I'm
Hmm.
also going to be the one to say, look, depending on where you're going, I'm going to send you to a travel doctor. You need to go get your inoculations. A lot of people, they forget this, but go into Southeast Asia and you don't have your yellow fever or malaria shot, and let's see how you feel once you catch it, because it's actually a real issue, right?
Yeah.
And so just having another voice of reason around too, to remind you of these types of things, and to, I think, serve as that phone a friend, I think it's priceless to me.
Yeah, I think that's great. And on the point of concierges and local tour guides, how would you, tell people that they would actually ensure a good travel experience?
Yeah, I mean, so when I work with people, I also directly find out about the hotel's concierges. So I am literally in direct touch with these people on a day-to-day basis, trying to
Yeah.
make sure that all of your, logistics are together. If you're there for a honeymoon, if you're there for an anniversary, if you're there with children, I'm notorious for putting in a phone call and saying they're coming with kids. That means that I need you to have some fruits and snacks in that room. So it's either going to be, you're going to do a complimentary because they got that room, or I'm going to send over a couple of credits on my behalf for these guys, because I want to make sure that when those kids get in there, the first thing that's on their mind is not worrying about food, because it was already thought about, it was already considered.
Right.
Sometimes when I know people are traveling far distance, like 16, 17, 18 hours, I'm like, not only do I need snacks and food up in that joint, but I also need, for you to put a bottle of wine in there. I need for you to put some chocolate, something that tells them, thank you for traveling 16 hours to get to us, because we know that you could have chosen anywhere between those hours to stop. Right.
Yeah, no,
So
I love that.
it's the reminding these hotels that you didn't have to stay with them, but you chose to stay with them, and therefore they should heighten that experience for you and make sure you feel just as special as you are.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that a lot because I feel like you can just have such a better trip when it's just properly planned.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
yeah, and that's what you guys do. And on that note of travel affordability, I just wanted to touch on like three, or basically it's one topic, but three kind of sides to it. Because I
Mhm.
know that you plan for a lot of different people that have a lot of different incomes, looking for
Yeah.
more expensive trips, more bang for your buck trips. What is your favorite budget-friendly hotel chain? And then what would be your favorite luxury hotel chain? And then what's one in the middle? So kind of low,
Yeah.
high, and middle.
Yeah. I feel like the Marriott chain feels like it is low to middle for me. Because you can literally find a room for like $100 a night.
Yeah.
Right. And so that feels right to me. I think in the middle, I would probably go with a Hilton, or I would probably go with a Hilton.
Mhm.
I think at the above part, the top range, I am a Four Seasons girl. I'm a Ritz Carlton type girl, and so and those are not even like the best, but
Yeah.
they work right.
They work
We're
perfect.
not
Yeah.
affording anything faster, so listen.
Yeah.
But I think I would put Four Seasons, Ritz Carlton, as a part of the luxury experience.
I like that. And I love, like, I feel like Hilton's very good middle. And then I feel like Marriott is, they're always reliable. And then
Yeah.
even if you need to be affordable, even if you need to have something that's affordable, it's still not like you're staying in a red roof or something. You're
That's
not
right.
in a
It
dump.
doesn't feel like a Motel 8. It's not one of those things, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you do have the Embassy Suite type places and stuff like that that does
Yeah.
give a Motel 8 plus
Yeah.
experience, right? Because it still doesn't feel Motel 8, but you know it's not a Hilton or a Marriott.
Mhm.
But I think depending on the season also, right? There's different travel seasons. Depending on the seasons, you probably have a little bit of any of these things.
Yeah.
Or for something, $100 or a couple $100 or something. So
Yeah. No, I love that. Rakima, this has been such an amazing series with you. We just thank you for taking the time to just educate us and our travel brats. And we loved all of this. And guys, if you want to get in touch with Rakima, you know what her website is. Message her if you want her to plan your trip. Let her know. Or if you have any other questions, reach out to her, to me. And we hope that you enjoy this. If you enjoyed it, guys, leave us a review, leave her a review in her company. And Rakima, again, thank you and have a great year. And we'll catch you soon.